Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I also have to excuse myself to go straight into English, as I have been recommended to do. So, meu nome é José Carlos Fonseca, mas vou moderar esse painel em inglês a pedido dos nossos organizadores. I'm the chairman of Empapel, the Brazilian Paper Packaging Association, and director for IBA, the Brazilian Tree Industry, which is the association representing the planted trees sector. So I indeed represent the whole value chain from the forests to the products and beyond with recycling and all. So I'm very happy to be here, very glad to moderate this first panel in which we'll be covering forest-based solutions, advancing circularity and sustainability in value chains. Before I introduce our keynote speakers and then our panelists, I just wanted to mention that we should all congratulate Fiesp, Sitra for this initiative, such an important and large event, very representative of the international community, of different stakeholders involved in such an important debate and agenda. We know that this session will explore forest-based industries and how they can enhance circularity and decarbonization in various value chains by adopting circular bioeconomy principles such as regenerative forestry and circular practices across the value chain. The forest sector can influence other industries. This supports biodiversity, combats climate change, and creates green jobs. This session will address challenges and opportunities from diverse stakeholder perspectives and highlight trends and innovations in circular forest-based business model. Of course, I cannot let go of this opportunity to mention that we, as IBA and Empapel, are very proud to see ourselves as a large-scale bioeconomy sector for which the trees that we plant are biorefineries, out of which we make in the hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of bioproducts that are more and more in our daily lives, not only the traditional ones, like pulp and paper, panels, and so on, but all the other new applications that are coming about thanks to innovation, investments, science and technology. So we in Brazil, also for most of our international visitors, this sector I have the honor to represent, we plant every day in Brazil, every single day, 1.8 million trees. We represent some 50 companies at IBA and almost 50 at Empapel. All in all, we plant, harvest, and replant in 10 million hectares for planted trees destined to commercial and industrial use. At the same time, our companies preserve in native forests almost 6.9, almost 7 million hectares in native vegetation, native forests, through a forest management process that we call mosaic in the landscape, in which we intermingle planted forests with native vegetation. And at the same time, IBA last year was very happy to receive as new members 5 important Brazilian companies that are devoted to native species, native forest restoration, which is a very important field, very promising one, and a very necessary one, considering that Brazil has an international commitment of reforesting, restoring some 12 million hectares in native vegetation. We have a lot of land, as you know, and lots of it has been land that was previously used up in other economic activities and nowadays are in bad need of restoration. Degraded land that some of these new up-and-coming members of our community have been devoted to restoring and to make them an important addition to our segment. To carry on our panel today, I would like to invite our first keynote speaker, who will take care of this issue of circular solutions for a forest-based bioeconomy. His name is Tim Forsland. He's from Sitra, and I welcome him to this stage. I hope he is here with us. Yes, you have already your mic with you. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be with you here today. So my name is Tim Forslund, or in Portuguese, Jim. And I work for the Finnish innovation fund, Sitra. And I think it's really a privilege to be here today to talk about a topic that I've spent the better part of the last few years working on. And I think it's, of course, all the more fun to be here in Brazil to talk about this. We, of course, have a pretty big challenge ahead of us if we are to make our forest sector one that is circular. But I also believe that this is first and foremost a value creation opportunity. You probably, in this room, most of you know Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, as the founder of the WCEF. But we, of course, do a lot more things than WCEF. As an action-oriented future fund and a think tank, we put foresight at the heart of all of our activities. And as such, we try to make sense of the future. And one of the trends that we saw more than 10 years ago was the circular economy. And my colleagues back then led the work with the world's first national circular economy roadmap, in which the forest sector was one of the 4 key sectors. Sitra has also contributed to some of the earliest work on tying together or linking circular economy with climate mitigation in 2018. And in 2022, we also published the first study on how a circular economy can tackle biodiversity loss, tackling root causes. And I would like to, based on this work, highlight 3 ways in which the circular economy can tackle biodiversity loss, just to provide some of the basics here. And the first way in which the circular economy can halt biodiversity loss is by driving regenerative outcomes in areas under production, in the bioeconomy not least, such as through the management practices that we select to use on our forest floor. Secondly, we can make use of less materials in the first place by giving us as much value as possible from our forest-based products and materials, thus leaving room for nature to thrive. And thirdly, we can reduce the pressures on biodiversity, for example, through less eutrophication, lower emissions. So it is a broad palette of solutions that the circular economy provides to tackle biodiversity loss and climate at the same time. And I think once we had this work, we had the analytics, we realized that this is great, but we also realized that even if we can tackle biodiversity loss by 2035 based on our scenario, we need action-oriented solutions to support the uptake of circular solutions in practice. So based on this, we decided to publish a handbook called Circular Solutions for Nature, in which we look at the 4 key sectors, so food and agriculture, textiles and fibers, buildings and construction, and of course the forest sector, which is at the heart of this. So this really captures how you can get started with this in practice, and walk you through the process and hold your hand as you try to set start using circular business models across your value chain. And you can also download it here through the QR code if you want to learn more. But we also thought that we can look at existing practices, so there's no excuse for inaction. We can get quite a lot done already today. And a few of the examples that I would like to highlight from our list that we published alongside the handbook show that we can get a lot done by focusing on these 4 key sectors in the bioeconomy. And we have about 30 different companies from Europe. And here today we have one of them, Heal, as well. And we also have 2 others, Origin by Ocean and Triodos Bank, which are also featured in parallel session 10. So we're very happy about that, of course. And I would like to really highlight that the circular economy is a value chain-wide approach. I think that you can say in Portuguese that esta transição não é possível sem o trabalho de todos. You really need to look in cada etapa, at every step of the road, where you can get started with circular economy. And this is different for different companies where you are in the value chain. So echoing the first speaker, I think you really need to look at the whole value chain. And based on this, we realized that you can rethink how you produce, and you can rethink value creation altogether through products as a service by using remanufacturing, reuse, and repair before looking at recycling, of course. And these solutions, these business models, are probably quite well known to most of you, and they're as relevant for the forest sector as they are for other sectors. But we also decided to add one more business model, regenerative solutions, since what you do on the forest floor is really important when you talk about the forest sector from a biodiversity and climate perspective, not least. And we also decided to really highlight, as we updated these business models, the role of design and valorization, since we do realize that based on the finite biomass that we have, based on that finite supply, we need to maybe reduce some of our very land-intensive and low-value practices and really reserve this biomass for high-value applications that are innovative and allow for long-lasting products to a higher degree where possible. And then we have the solution, so this is pretty simple, right? We can just get started. The forest sector is not simple. It is very complex. You need to look at more KPIs, more indicators to understand what are the key things that you are measuring compared to other sectors. You need to look at the composition of different trees. You need to look at the age structure, and you need to look at the volume of dead wood. So this is quite a challenge, of course. And forests in Finland, for instance, are very different from forests in Brazil. So we really need to be context and geography specific when you work with the forest sector. But the good news is also that what happens beyond the point of production on the forest floor, the solutions are by and large translatable between different countries, as the biomass is by and large quite similar. And I think just to provide some examples of this at each step of the value chain, I would like to point at some examples that already work. And on this figure, we try to illustrate that loops are wonderful. Everyone likes loops in the circular economy. But how you narrow the flow, that is the gray part here, that is equally important. How you reduce the input of new materials in the first place at each step of the value chain is as important as closing the loop. And here, I think in Finland, for instance, we have an innovation that looks at how you can produce, how you can replace graphite-based batteries from mines that you use in electric vehicle batteries, for instance, with a wood-based side stream. So when you realize that wood can actually be used for batteries, there's something that tells me that we're not unlocking the full or untapping the full potential of the circular economy in the forest sector. There is so much value embedded across it. Another example that comes to mind that is on our list is Vuokrapuu. They provide Christmas trees as a service. So after each Christmas, you can put the tree back in the ground. Next year, you can sell the same tree over and over. So single-use products do get a lot of attention, but there's also a bigger potential to get more value from the same products over and over. Even in areas such as packaging, furniture, areas that we don't necessarily think of, that they lend themselves to anything else but single use. I think our cases show that we can think a little bit further than that, and the sky is the limit. Ripe Office is a case that also enables the reuse of furniture. And with wood pallets, for instance, in Brazil, in Finland, we see that you can use the same wood pallets in industry over and over without discarding them after every use. And if one part of the wood pallet needs to be replaced, there are already existing solutions that allow for effective repair of the wood pallets. Lastly, I would just like to also highlight that we need to think of the forest as a system. What we do to harness the ecosystem services in the forests and how we use practices to diversify our production across different parts of our biomass, not just the wood, but all parts of the forest, is a huge value creation opportunity as well. And this allows for healthier as well as more productive and resilient forests, as well as forest economy, our forest economy. So with that, I would like to conclude and wish you a very inspiring conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tim, for your presentation and for participation as well. I'd like to move on. Just clarifying, we had a few minutes delay to get started, but it wasn't the moderator's fault. But anyhow, we are doing great. Our second keynote speaker, to whom I would invite to the stage, will deal with research and innovation for a circular bioeconomy, lessons from the Amazonia rainforest. I'd like to invite Daniel Chang from Red Bio Amazônia, who will speak in Portuguese, I understand. Bem-vindo, Daniel.
Obrigado, bom dia. Quero agradecer a Fiesp pelo convite, a Natasha, a Nícia, agradecer a CNI, que tem sido um ator muito importante para o avanço da economia circular no Brasil, a Sitra, pelo pioneirismo, né, na iniciativa do Fórum. E, bom, essa é a segunda vez que eu participo do Fórum. A primeira vez foi há cerca de 5, 6 anos. E, à época, eu estava no governo federal do Brasil e eu tive a felicidade de coordenar o primeiro roadmap de economia circular. E é muito gratificante ver que hoje o Brasil tem uma estratégia nacional, tem um plano nacional recém-lançado, assim como o nosso fórum mundial aqui, a dimensão e a proporção que ele tomou. Então, se lá atrás existia até um certo hype e muita curiosidade em relação ao tema da economia circular, hoje não é exagero dizer que economia circular é um imperativo. E isso é o ponto de partida aqui da minha conversa hoje. Vocês vão ouvir muito nesse evento, especialmente no painel hoje à tarde, sobre a tripla crise planetária. Né? Eu não vou entrar em detalhes, mas eu trouxe 3 marcadores importantes para vocês. O primeiro, aqui à direita, acima, é a concentração de carbono na atmosfera. É uma estatística que o NOAA faz. Nós estamos atualmente em 428 ppm. A ciência já dizia, acima de 400, os extremos climáticos vão se intensificar, e tanto em ocorrências como em intensidade, e é o que de fato nós temos observado. À esquerda, a pegada ecológica, ou, traduzindo aqui em uma linguagem bem simples, um orçamento que nós teríamos anual, em termos de recursos naturais, chega no dia 1º de agosto, nós já esgotamos esse orçamento e passamos mais 5 meses numa espécie de saldo negativo, sem a capacidade natural de regeneração do planeta. E, finalmente, aqui abaixo, o framework de limites planetários do Centro de Resiliência de Estocolmo, onde 9 desses limites já foram atingidos e 6 ultrapassados. E aqui eu chamo a atenção especialmente às dimensões de integridade da biosfera. Então, realmente, a ação humana está levando o planeta comprometendo a vida na biosfera. E, nesse novo normal, nem a Amazônia escapa. Nos últimos 2 anos, nós tivemos uma mega seca histórica, né, sem precedentes. Esse é o Lago Tefé, no Médio Solimões, uma das moradas do boto cor-de-rosa, que é uma espécie símbolo. A temperatura nesse lago ultrapassou 40 graus Celsius, e os impactos disso ainda não estão totalmente evidenciados, né? Uma das sequelas, a gente está observando esse ano, uma das cadeias de valor mais tradicionais, que é a da castanha, está com 70% de quebra na produção, atingindo inúmeras comunidades locais que dependem, né, dessa cadeia. E isso nos traz um quadro, né, de que realmente nós não podemos mais dar as coisas como dadas, como garantidas. Mesmo aqui, né, se você está numa empresa, numa indústria aqui em São Paulo, em algum centro urbano, é importante olhar com a lente da economia circular a partir de uma visão sistêmica, não é? Porque a gente acha que o nosso fornecedor sempre vai fornecer, não vai falhar. Da onde que vem esses insumos? Da onde vem a energia que abastece a minha planta, a água, os resíduos? Então, hoje nós temos que estar muito atentos a essas questões todas. E é justamente, acho que essa inspiração que a Amazônia nos traz, né, de lição, de como, né, uma floresta, claro, você olha de uma imagem de satélite, uma imagem aérea, você pensa que é tudo igual, mas não. A floresta é uma explosão de vida, ela é mega biodiversa. E a Amazônia ela é superlativa em tudo, né? São mais de 20.000 espécies catalogadas, mais de 300 povos originários, 20% da água doce do planeta. E o que faz essa floresta permanecer durante anos, séculos, milênios? Né? Ela tem uma capacidade, ela tem um padrão natural, onde os sistemas, dos mais simples aos mais complexos, operam num padrão rede. Ou seja, existe uma perturbação, existe um choque, há uma resposta endógena do sistema de ter mutações e adaptações que levam a um ponto de equilíbrio dinâmico. Então, adaptação, resiliência e sintropia são lições muito profundas da floresta para o sapiens moderno, que está desconectado, né, do ciclo natural. E esse movimento que a economia circular traz, né, esse convite a nós pensarmos e agirmos de um modo em direção à economia regenerativa, eu penso que hoje não há uma resposta que seja tão poderosa, tão contundente, tão exemplar quanto os sistemas agroflorestais, né? Isso tem sido altamente difundido no Brasil e no mundo. No Brasil, já tem mais de 1 milhão de hectares contratados em projetos de restauração com agrofloresta. E o que torna a agrofloresta tão interessante? Ela segue esses princípios da natureza. Diversidade, densidade, estratificação, cobertura de solo. Isso restaura a vitalidade, os processos, né, de micronutrientes, disponibilidade de nutrientes no solo, com um ganho econômico hoje, em média, 3 vezes maior do que as atividades convencionais, né, de pecuária extensiva e monocultura de soja, que são drivers de destruição. Então, são lições fortes. É evidente que a floresta tem um valor maior em pé do que derrubada, mas nós precisamos conhecer, para justamente poder valorizar. Então, hoje, com a tecnologia, com as sequências digitais, com a capacidade de pesquisa em ativos da biodiversidade, em sequenciar moléculas de interesse que podem gerar inúmeras descobertas científicas. Isso hoje é possível com bioensaios apoiados por inteligência artificial, em que rapidamente a gente consegue testar, por exemplo, uma atividade contra, por exemplo, antitumoral ou desenvolvimento de fármaco, assim como novas aplicações, superalimentos, novos materiais, a indústria do bem-estar. E quando a gente aproxima esse universo da pesquisa com a biodiversidade do mundo empreendedor, então nós temos uma condição muito interessante de promover um ecossistema de inovação que possa efetivamente emergir soluções para os problemas que nós temos atualmente. E eu quero aqui trazer muito rapidamente 2 startups que nascem na Amazônia com DNA de economia circular. Uma é Aracouro, são bolsas, acessórios feitos com o couro de peixes nativos, e o interessante aqui é o processo de curtimento desse couro, ele é todo feito de um modo sustentável, não utiliza cromo, que tem um impacto ambiental relevante, né? E essas tonalidades lindas aqui, elas são obtidas com corantes naturais, né? Então, saiu uma reportagem recente na Exame, vocês podem ir lá acompanhar. E a outra aqui que eu quero trazer, que é a Duca, essa é interessante porque são embalagens feitas a partir da fécula da mandioca, com resíduos de agrofloresta, mas o interessante aqui é que é uma fábrica que está inserida no polo industrial de Manaus. Hoje, vocês sabem, no Brasil, grande parte do escoamento da indústria de eletrônicos, celulares, notebooks, saem do polo industrial de Manaus em embalagens de plástico, isopor. E agora nós temos uma startup produzindo 120 mil unidades por mês, dentro desse ecossistema, né? Então, eu chamo a atenção para o PPBio, que é o programa liderado pelo IDESAM, o Instituto Local da Amazônia, com diversos parceiros, apoio da SUFRAMA, apoio do setor privado. Então, se você é uma empresa quer fazer um investimento ESG na Amazônia seguro e com garantia de sucesso, procure institutos como o IDESAM, que tem atuação há muito tempo e com os parceiros locais, contribuir para esse movimento. É uma equipe muito talentosa no IDESAM, e isso que eu queria trazer, essa inspiração da floresta. Eu sou secretário técnico da Rede Bioamazônia. Atualmente a gente reúne 8 institutos, dos principais institutos de pesquisa e inovação em biodiversidade da região. Tem meu contato aqui no aplicativo do evento. Eu quero desejar um bom fórum, um bom painel e excelentes conexões. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado, Daniel. Thank you very much, Daniel. Very interesting in the presentation. I think we all have lots of food for thought. I just wanted to comment comentar com você about the packaging in Manaus, in the industrial district in Manaus, that we also have some paper packaging over there. Okay, just to tease with you. But anyhow, let's move on to our panel discussion now. And I'm very glad to introduce a brilliant set of participants. I will start by inviting to the floor, to the stage, Marina Negrisoli. Marina is the head of sustainability globally for Suzano, one of the largest companies in our sector. Bem-vinda, welcome Marina Negrisoli. I would like also to invite Mr. Daniel Barreto from Acessa. You are most welcome, Daniel, bem-vindo. I'd like to invite Yuna Koitilainen. I hope I pronounced correctly your last name, Yuka. And also my friend Celso Tacla, who is the CEO for Valmet and a very close friend of my sector. Bem-vindo, welcome, Celso. Please have a seat. I'll now join our panelists here. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to have all of you here this morning to close the first morning of this event. And I will start our panel discussion on how forest-based industries can enhance circularity, decarbonization, and biodiversity. I will start, if I may, with Marina. Please, Marina. My first, we'll try to make 3 rounds of questions here, so we have to manage our time, but we have plenty of it. For this first round, my question for all of you would be to ask you to focus on what each company is doing under the light of this theme that we have been given. Marina, please tell us what Suzano defines as and implements in terms of circular economy principles in its business model, and what are the company's main circularity goals?
Sure, complex question. Thank you so much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to be here today representing our sector and discussing such an important topic for our country specifically. At Suzano, we manage quite a sizable land. We have almost 3 million hectares of land that managed in Brazil, which 1.1 is set aside for conservation. So I think the first part of the regenerative part of circularity, we take this, fully because we believe that sustainability and having healthy landscape views, this is part of the success of our business. Circularity is at the core of our strategy when we deploy our long-term goals, when we have our processes and actions, mainly focus in 3 points. One is how do we reduce impact, pollution, emission. Decarbonization is a huge, platform for us, not only on the industrial side, but also how we capture more through our land use. The changing and using the best. Tim mentioned this a while ago, and we follow your framework, and thank you for that. We follow this since 2024 when it was launched, and we have various initiatives on using the tree, as you mentioned, the most of what you can from it. So we use black liquor, we use all the barks to have now almost 90% of all our electricity coming from the tree and the byproducts of the tree in a green energy approach. Also on this using the materials, we have implemented in already 4 of our mills usage of the residuals, inorganic residuals, into soil acidity correctors. So how can we, instead of having residuals, bring this to an upper value stream and use this in our own supply chain? And the regenerative discussions, as we have the conservation, we currently have 45,000 hectares being restored with native species within our plantation. This is a bit of an overview in the time we have.
How many trees does Suzano plant every day?
1.2 million a day.
It's quite a lot. Now let's move to the next panelist, Daniel Barreto from Acessa. Daniel, I would ask you, what is the most promising circular economy practices? What are the most promising circular economy practices currently being applied by Acessa?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for the organization for this very kind invitation. And I kind of feel strange here, but I hope that I'm going to give a shocking revelation now that I'm not much into forest. And I hope you don't throw me out of the stage right now. But my company does something a little bit different, but very well inserted in something that you have already well described. We are a company that does active ingredients for the personal care industry. So we chase interesting molecules in interesting places and try to find if those molecules can trigger or bring some kind of benefit to skin or hair. So our mission is to make women more beautiful if it's possible, and men less ugly, and this is also a challenge. But this is what we do. We look after interesting molecules in interesting places. And then once we find the molecules, our next challenge is to extract, process, develop clean processes, and then make those molecules and test them to check if they work. So we are just in a B2B business model. Our clients are the big cosmetic companies throughout the world. So this is what we do. Forests are a part of our interests. In fact, we try to find molecules in nature, generally speaking. Everything at our company, Acessa, comes from sustainable source. And now, actually, I would say that around 50% of the innovations in our funnel are already coming from upcycling sources. So we look after sources that are or co-products or byproducts or wastes from existing chains. So our main challenge or our main attention now is to look after supply chains, circular supply chains. This is our key point. But of course, there's other aspects that maybe are part of our values. But I will say that try to build up and go from the 50% to 100% of molecules coming from sustainable chains, and circular sustainable chains is our challenge. Thank you.
Quite interesting, Daniel. Thank you very much for the presentation on your company, Acessa. I will now move on to Mr. Celso Tacla, who is the CEO of Valmet. And my question is, how is Valmet helping companies move from traditional pulp and paper models toward broader bio-based value chains? How does this links to business models that we have heard about during the initial presentation? Celso.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador, for the good question. And just thinking about what I heard from a few minutes ago, there are many, many connections. So many things that I am going to tell you here now, I just heard from you, Marina and Tim, for example. So we provide technologies and services for the pulp and paper and energy and bio industry. So with this, we provide the customers the possibility to make high quality pulp while extracting valuable products from the sub products from this normally waste that was not used before. So I will give you a few examples. For example, the chemicals, the sulfuric acid. So that was in the past, very far away from today's time. Like these gases in the pulp industry, it was thrown to the atmosphere. And then later, it was collected and incinerated into the boilers and lime kiln and so on. But today, we have technologies to extract the sulfur and produce sulfuric acid that is used in the pulp mill. It is enough for the whole pulp mill, and also to use in the chemicals that are used for the bleaching part. So it is a great advance in this sense, And then the other one is like renewable materials that you know very well, the lignin. One example. So that is the second most abundant biopolymer in the earth. So after the cellulose. So we are talking here about these big things. And with the lignin, we can make composites, replace phenol-based glues for plywood and panel board. Batteries, like Tim was mentioning here. So that's a nice development. And cosmetics, it's gaining grounds in the cosmetics industry. And then a sustainable fiber to make textiles. You know that the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the planet. So we can help and find more sustainable solutions for this. And energy, like a green energy, you mentioned there. So these giant pulp mills, they are also giant producers of green energy. Take this Arauco mill that we are delivering now for Arauco plant in Mato Grosso do Sul, Inocência. It will produce 400 megawatts. Out of that, 200 megawatts of green power can be exported. So the mill is self-sufficient, and still we can export half of that. So I think it goes very much aligned with the new mill for Suzano in the same state there. And so these are very nice examples. And the last one, just to complete this paper machine for Klabin, it's like a part of the solutions we find for the packaging. We are developing new barriers. We are developing 3D pulp that goes directly from the pulp to the packaging without having to pass through the paper making. But this paper machine 27 that we delivered for Klabin a few years ago, that's a showcase where the paper this kind of paper that was produced before using long fiber, pine fiber, now they can produce this with 100% short fiber. So, and what is the benefit? Instead of 50,000 hectares, they can produce the same amount of paper with 30,000 hectares with better physical properties that, and then they can save 10% fibers in the formulation. So that's a really a very good showcase, where each step of the chain benefits from the circularity and efficiency, from the forest to the transportation, paper making, the packaging, the end user, and also the recycling. So this is really, at a glance, some of the things that we are doing towards the circularity.
Thank you very much, Celso. Very promising fields and areas and new developments. Congratulations. I will now move on to Juna Koitilainen from Hill. Is this the way you pronounce the name of your company?
Both are correct. Thank
Please, you have the floor. Probably.
Yes.
I'm not that close to the correct accent. Please correct me.
Yes. So to tell a story about Hill, I must go first tell a story about Wood Artist, a company we established 11 years ago with my brother Miikka Kotilainen. And we were a really small carpentry workshop working with wooden furniture. But what made us special was that we used almost exclusively reclaimed wood in our produce. So we went for swamps, we went for rivers, and we started lifting up material sources that no one else would see benefit to use. And we got some publicity in Finland in doing this really exquisite furniture. And this caught the attention of some circular economy specialists from a company called Spolia Design. And 3 years ago, they asked us a really crucial question that led to the establishment of HEAL. They asked us that, could you help us generate ideas? What could we do on the construction industry waste wood? In Finland, 99% of the construction industry waste wood gets incinerated, so burned to energy. And my brother Miikka had an idea that what if we wouldn't burn the wood, but instead we would burn the wood. I mean, not completely, but just from the surface of it. And he tried and applied fire on construction waste wood. And as you can see, it turns black, it turns into char. So if it has sand, if it has concrete, you can then eliminate the sand and concrete from the char by washing the wood. So we apply fire and water on the construction waste wood, and thus we can generate and reclaim the wood back into construction use. And this was our kind of key idea, what we started working on, and it led into a company establishment, and now we are building a factory in Eastern Finland with some investors' money, so we are quite heavily on a startup mode yet to make revenue ends meet and yet to make revenue, but we are advancing to that direction.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to you and to your brother for having founded this company, and good luck to you. For our second round of questions, I would go back to Marina, if I may. What challenges has Suzano faced in its journey of integrating circularity? And what were and are the ways to unlock these challenges and overcome them?
Yeah, that's the 1 billion question, right? But it's a very important debate, because once you are kind of the initial movement in a sector, it's always harder because technology is not there, or the economical returns that a business would usually look for, it's not there either. So how you have to bring to the table partners, both on the financing, timing of the things that would be willing to wait a bit longer for the business case to mature, together with academia or partners that kind of can chime in with the technology or the research required. I think we are kind in a privileged position because we are fully, verticalized from the seedling to the shelf. So in a way, this makes it easier, because companies that they have just a piece of the full supply chain, it makes a bit harder. But I think the main challenge, to be more specific, is technology. And probably the main way to overcome this gap is partnership. I will kind of bring together the point that Tim said and that Celso brought about lignin and the batteries. We invested in a UK-based battery companies that they use lignin as, the means to substitute the minerals. So I think this is kind of a way that we have to look on how do we not only do the investments, we do the progress, but that we become the catalyzer on the full ecosystem to move forward.
Very interesting, Marina, thank you. Let's now hear Daniel Barreto with Acessa on what are the main challenges your company faces in scaling circular economy practices within a value chain of big companies.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Being a company that is not a big company, it's a medium-sized company, our biggest challenge was exactly to match the scales. For example, I would love to later discuss with Suzano about some tiny little amount of bark that I could try to explore to extract a very good antioxidant for cosmetic use. But I have to discuss with Suzano and do the matching, because Suzano is a big company and generates big amount of residues or some. So matching the scales always a challenge. In the case that brought me to this stage was a challenge that we solved. We found we wanted to work with residues from the juice industry. They generate lots of seeds and barks from the fruits. They press to get the juice. And we had to find the right company with the right culture, the right mindset that could align with our mindset and the scale too. So scaling is key there. So they are not a big company. We could find the right scale and we find the match. We got a bibliothèque of different molecules from different wastes. Got one which comes from ginger, and we extracted the ginger, which is nasty waste because doesn't, it's difficult to absorb in nature. So we could get the valuable molecules and create a new product to protect the hair against exposome damage. So it was a nice project. We had a challenge to find the right scale. So scaling or matching the scales is always a challenge, and also a very, very big opportunity for all of us if we can do the right matchmaking.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Let's go ahead with Celso Tacla and Valmet's vision on what is the largest barrier that you see today for large-scale circularity in the forest sector, and how is Valmet tackling it?
All right, thank you. Well, I will highlight some, and then, for example, the political. There are like shifting governments, and then you know the story, then shifting priorities that goes together. Then the technology. I think that Marina tackled this point, proof of concept. Many companies, many customers, they want to see the systems in operation and we are getting there, but not everything is working at this point in time. The customers, many customers, they are not used to work with biomass, so it's a learning process for them as well. And then the collaboration, it's the fragmentation of the value chain and the lack of cross-section cooperation. For example, how to match the scales, and many things can come into this pocket. And then we are having this R&D initiative that is called Beyond Circularity. It is one way that we are tackling this problem, this collaboration. And here we are developing technologies for recycling, plastics, panel board or textiles, biorefining. It's another stream to develop the biofuels and biomaterials, the resource efficiency in a pulp or paper mill, how we can close the circuits, how we can use less energy, how we can produce more energy, all these things. And then developing automation and digitalization solutions. But the key here is the collaboration. So, because one industrial player can only do so much, but it takes the collaboration, the cooperation between the companies and the sectors in the form of a joint strategy to really make the green transition happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Celso, once again. And let's now listen to Yuna. Yuna, what has been the toughest challenge in scaling up your solution, and how have you managed to overcome it?
The toughest challenge is the cooperation, and is the kind of system problems with when it comes to wood waste. When we found the technical solution to clear out the residues from the waste wood, we announced that, hey, we can solve this and we will start operations with the construction industry. But we didn't know at the time that the construction industry was not ready to kind of collect all the wood, or to pile them up and grade them and assort them into different sections, so that we could get clear streams of similar dimensions that they use in sawmill industry. So there is a lot of mediators and a lot of actors missing from the chain, and as a startup company we could not start working on those problems ourselves, and so we looked into different kinds of wood streams that are also discarded, and we found out from sawmill industry that there are large amounts of wood that is not being in long-term use, for example in facades, terraces or house construction. So we started taking those into and applying fire on those as well. But to end on a positive note, the construction industry has woken up in Finland at least. There are several initiatives and projects going on, and every week we get discussions with new players of companies who have started mediating these waste streams and have started collecting, classifying and shipping them to companies who would like to produce circular economy based wood products. So I think it's going to a more positive direction.
Thank you very much, Juna. Once again, let's move to our third and final round here. Now mix up the order here a little bit. So Celso, looking to 2030, what role do you envisage for technology providers like Valmet in making the forest sector fully circular? Let's try to be brief in this last round.
Yeah, well, we have our technology strategy, and then we also have our climate program. In the climate program, we have the targets that we are following, and we are reaching some of them. And the targets, they are for our own operations, so we want to reduce the greenhouse gases by 80% in the own operations. We reached the 70% already. So we want to reduce 20% the CO2 emissions in the supply chain. And then also enable our customers to produce pulp and paper free of CO2 emissions. That we reached this target in 2023. And then and develop new technologies to reduce the energy consumption in the plants by 20%. So these are the targets that we are working and reaching. And then we want to advance in the circular economy practices. I mentioned this Beyond Circularity program, and there we have to develop the collaboration and ecosystem. And today, Ambassador, we have 290 parties in this ecosystem. So the plan before, it was not the plan, but our view is that we would have by 2025 100 partners, but we have 290. It's almost 3 times the number of the partners that we foresaw. So there is a will. And the thing here is that we think about circularity not as a destination, but as a mindset. And we are talking about forest, and then to convert every fiber into value. So that should be the mindset. And every challenge into a joined solution. So this is the way that we are seeing.
Thank you very much, Celso. Let's now listen for Juna. My final question to you, Juna, would be: how do you see customer demand evolving? Are businesses and consumers ready to embrace circular wood products?
I will answer really briefly. 70% of our sales, what we've done with the wood products, have been of circular economy origin already. And one key thing there has been that we have been able to keep the circular economy product on a lower price than the virgin wood product. And I think that has been the key factor of driving the sales and making the consumers choose more responsible and more product that is of circular origin. If it would be 2 times more higher price, I think the consumers would like to have it, but then they couldn't afford it. So I think it comes down to pricing and also manufacturing efficiency to get the production into the level that you can sell good products on a cheaper cost.
Thank you very much, Juna. Now let's see how we make the final tempo esgotado there. Let's listen for the final answer from Acessa. What is the potential of bio-based materials to enhance circularity in cosmetics value chain? Let's be brief, please.
Yeah, I think it's needless to say that we are kind of an exception here, because the personal care industry really wants things that are good to the environment, to nature. It really needs new molecules. It's very innovative. It's an industry that is very innovative and looks after new molecules, new active ingredients, new everything. But if it comes from a sustainable source, upcycling, circular economy, those are magic words for our customers. So our customers, the cosmetic companies throughout the world, because their customers are getting more and more conscious about the origin of the cosmetics that they are using. So I feel really privileged to be in this area, because it's very helpful. They want us to do that. So it's not, and we're not just responding. It is our values, but they match very well with the new demands. So the future is really brilliant for us. I hope.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Sure. And good luck. This future is ours. You're right, yes. Let's now hear Marina from Suzano. How can cross-sector collaboration, for instance, packaging, fashion, accelerate and potentialize the impact of circular economy practices from Suzano?
Yeah, that's a challenge to be brief and to talk all about this. But jokes aside, this is a very important topic that we have to foster circularity, sustainability at the core of a base material industry as ours, that goes to textile, to packaging, and not only with the aim of replacing fossil fuel, but also to foster a better landscape management. And when we come to Brazil, and for most of foreigners here in the room, please paying attention to the social aspect. I think Daniel brought this in the nice pictures here, the example of the Amazon. We will never have the aim of circularity on kind of mimetizing nature in countries like Brazil if we don't include social as an important and relevant aspect of the overall strategy. So I would like to leave these remarks on this brief answer.
Brilliant, Marina. You're absolutely right, yes. So now we have to wrap up this very insightful and albeit short session, but it shows clearly that the journey towards a circular and decarbonized bioeconomy is not only a promise or a discourse, but it's something already in motion with some brilliant examples we heard about today. Through the leadership of companies like those represented here, we've seen how innovation, collaboration, and commitment are redefining how we view materials, waste, and resource efficiency. The forest-based sector has shown its potential not just to transform itself, but to inspire broader industry shifts towards sustainability and resilience. Our discussions today highlighted the importance of integrated value chains, technological advancement, and cross-sector partnerships in overcoming barriers and scaling circular solutions. It's evident that by investing in regenerative forestry, enhancing material circularity, and leveraging technology, we can drive impactful change, creating not just greener products, but more sustainable communities and the economy and economies. And of course, with this final word that Marina timely gave rise to, we have in a country like Brazil to pay attention constantly to the social aspects of circularity, of this discussion, of the solutions we are eager to find and promote and develop. So thank you very much. Sorry for the late beginning, but we are almost done with it within the time constraint we had. Thank you very much, all of you, for your attention.